Hi, my name is Chris DeBona. I look after a lot of open source stuff at Google. But you're not here for me. You're here for the incredibly large number of people we have on this stage. And we're going to start from the far left, my left, your right, with Dan. Dan, introduce yourself and pass it down.
Hello. I would like to first thank you on behalf of the entire Android team for being here to hear us speak today instead of being downstairs collecting your free hardware. So thank you for that. I'm Dan Morrill. I do things.
I'm Ray Meyer. I'm the tech lead for the developer relations team.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Zavin. I'm the tech lead for the Android systems team.
My name is Ficus Kirkpatrick, and I'm a software engineer on Google Play.
My name is Diane Hackborn, and I work on the application framework.
I'm Xavier Ducret. I'm the tech lead for the SDK and developer tools.
I'm Fred Quintana. I'm the tech lead manager for sync, accounts, and data messaging.
I'm Michael Soliski. I'm a product manager on Google Play.
I'm Dave Burke, engineering director for platform software, and most accurately described as overhead.
I think that's my job.
Hi, my name is James. I'm the tech lead for media team.
Great. You can just keep hold of that and pass it amongst yourselves. So the way this is going to work, we have a number of questions from the moderator instance, which I'm going to draw from. In between, you're going to the microphones and asking questions. It is a fireside chat, hence the fire. And this is a YouTube video called 98 Minutes of Fire. And I scrubbed through it to see if there was anything gross, but you're all adults, you know. Because YouTube would never let you down. That's what I've learned. So if you guys want to come to the mics and line up, that's great. I have no idea how many of you we'll get to today. We have 57 minutes and 41 seconds. So I'm going to start with some of the moderator questions. Are you guys actually lined up for questions, or are you just standing around? I can't tell. There's no mic back there. Okay, so you're a questioner guy. Why don't you kick us off, someone here in the room?
Okay. I have a question, actually, about there seems to be a gap between the build environment for Eclipse and Ant. You know, I have like let's say a kind of plain Java project, and that I want to use in other Java projects, not just Android projects, but I also want to use them in Android. And it's always like kind of a battle keeping the references in Eclipse up to date with and in sync with the references in the Ant file. So I'm wondering if there's any way to kind of streamline that, or plans to kind of just make them one and the same.
Yes, so in your particular case, since you have a regular Java project, you should be able to just add some custom rule to your Ant file to just reference that and generate a jar file and drop it somewhere in the project that needs it. It's kind of crappy. We are well aware of that, and we're actually looking currently at revamping the whole thing to have one single build system that's shared across command line or build server and Eclipse.
Yeah, cool. That's what I wanted to know.
Let's go for this fellow over here.
Hi.
This one's empty, this mic over here, by the way, just so you know. That one's got like 20 people on it. Go ahead.
Yeah. With the Chrome browser now coming on Android, on Jelly Bean, what happens to the original Android browser? And does that get taken out of the Android open source? And also, what happens with Webview?
So the Nexus 7 is the first device that we actually pre-installed Chrome. With the Galaxy Nexus feedback. With the Galaxy Nexus, when you get an upgrade from Ice Cream Sandwich to Jelly Bean, we're not actually going to pre-install Chrome, because some users prefer using the Android browser, which has Flash support, for example. What we are doing is actually converting the Webview that's in Android to the Chromium-based code. So we're actually working on upstreaming the code right now into chromium.org. And so then that Webview will become one single browser. And then, organizationally, internally, we sort of combine teams. So we have like Android engineers and Chrome engineers working on it together. So it's a grand unification theory.
So then, but what happens when, like in the old Android platform, you couldn't actually update your browser, right? And you couldn't update Webview. So does that mean Webview now will get updated regularly?
No, it's actually, it's a really good question. No, what we'll actually do is, so when a new version of Android comes out, the Webview and the Chrome browser will be one and the same. They'll use the same Webview. Then every 6 weeks or whatever it is that we update Chrome, we'll update the Chrome browser APK, but we won't change the web view. So it'll actually be a larger install because of that. And the reason we want to do that is we don't want to risk any compatibility issues with people's applications who are using Webview. Now, I mean, Chrome works really hard to make sure that every update that you get silently on your desktop is backwardly compatible, but we're just going to play it very careful. So they're kind of separated.
Thanks. Great, thanks. So I'll take one from the moderator. Google Maps SDK for Android is getting long in the tooth. Memory leaks, no fragment support, only a single map per app. Any word on improvements? I don't know if we have a GMM somewhere. You got it, Dave.
What can I say about this? Word on yes, we're working on it. No ETA on launching it, but totally understood. The version that's out there is quite old. We're just trying to figure out exactly what it is we're launching and when we're launching it. So I think I just dodged that question.
Okay.
Sorry.
Say that my app uses the support library. Is there any work to automatically have that use the native version of the APIs?
Some parts of the support library switch to the native versions, some don't, and that's done based on what makes most sense. For example, fragments always use the one in the support library because you really don't want to get the different behavior that's in the platform. And it doesn't really have an impact on how it runs on the newer versions, so we decided that it was best to always use the one in the support library. There's a bunch of other stuff that lets you selectively use newer things in the platform.
Thank you.
How can we install multiple versions of the same APK, like a prod build, a QA build, and a dev build?
Give them different package names, I guess, is the only answer for that.
Yeah, but that generally screws up our version control because...
Get better version control.
Thank you.
Some of the Git guys work for me. Will the ability to back up our entire phone to a computer or some of the local storage be possible in Jelly Bean? As I understand, this is possible in Ice Cream Sandwich. Will I use Android ADB? So before you answer that, I'm going to pick things that are more developer-focused going forward, just so you know, as opposed to this what I consider a very user-focused thing. I mean, users are great, right? But go ahead.
So the ADB backup stuff that was put into Ice Cream Sandwich is still in Jelly Bean. There were no changes really done to it in Jelly Bean.
Okay, great. I think I go this direction here. Yeah.
Okay, so my question's about app discovery on the Google Play Store. So about 1 month ago, I released my app for the first time. I only got like 30 downloads. It's a free app. If you compare that to releasing iOS on the first time, I got like 4,000 downloads. It's because I didn't actually realize, but you guys removed the What's New section from the Google Play Store. So there's no way that users can find fresh new apps. Is there any plans to bring back What's New? I know you're getting spammed a little bit, but maybe you could fix the spam somehow, get rid of the spam.
Yeah, so the what's new on a per category basis is something that we're actively looking at bringing back in the future. For app discoverability in general, that's something that we care very deeply about. We know that you all care very deeply about as well. So improving, I think, the storefront and making the apps that get featured there, making a much broader and deeper list is something we're looking at. We also just today launched recommendations, and so doing personalized and social recommendations is something that we hope will get a lot more apps in front of people in a lot more places as well.
Okay.
Hi. With recent phones that are running high resolutions, like 1280 by 800, so is there a way to kind of like easily to identify if the user device is a phone or tablet? Because right now, I couldn't find a way to do that.
Resolution doesn't matter. It's DP units. So 1280 by, actually it's kind of funny. We have actually Zoom, Galaxy Nexus, and now the Nexus 7. They're all basically 1280 by 800 resolution screens. But they're very different devices, and it's because they have different densities. So if you convert those to DP units, then you see that they're actually very different screen sizes, and that's why a lot of the newer stuff in the platform for selecting different layouts and stuff is based on DP units.
Okay. Can I ask one more question? So right now the app, so we really like the new smart app update, only update the Delta of the app. Is there a way going forward for user to only download the set of like image drawables for his own phone resolutions instead of downloading the whole applications, because there's only one resolution that works for the device, which is kind of a waste to the user and also the bandwidth.
I don't know if we're planning a per resolution delta.
Yeah, I think that's something that we want to look at doing. Right now we found we got the most bang for the buck by doing the deltas, like you said. The good news there is that the update, the delta kind of eats up most of the download that used to have to take place. I think you could see a lot less disk footprint, you're right, if we scale things down. The problem is that we're seeing a lot of these devices that can operate in multiple densities, like you plug it into a TV or something, so it's a little trickier than you might think at first glance, but it's definitely something we're looking at.
Thank you.
Thanks. Gifting and promo codes for paid apps and in-apps purchases, please. One use case is paid gift apps to people who contribute to development without the hassle, distributing updates outside of Google Play. So that sort of update to Google Play.
Is that feature request?
Yeah, it's a feature request.
I think that would be great.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay. So find that and star
all
that,
for it.
whoever wrote that. So we go to you.
This kind of ventures away from being an app developer, but what would be the best thing to focus on learning to eventually become part of your team?
Skydiving.
Thank you.
Or rappelling. Yeah.
Hi. So as a developer, Webgl is really, really exciting. Firefox and Opera on Android offer Webgl support today. In iOS, you can flip a bit and get Webgl in any Webview. But for Chrome for Android and the Android browser, we don't have it. So when can we expect it?
Good question. Internally, I've seen it working. I think the basic issue with WebGL is kind of denial of service and GPU stability. So the concern is, you're on the drive-by web, you hit a web page, and then it pegs your GPU either because it's a bug or because it's malicious, or worse, it exposes a GPU bug and your phone reboots. And so there's some work in Kronos to try to sanitize it, I guess, make it safer. And so we're just kind of looking at that right now and trying to figure out if we can release it in a safe way. And again, Android's a platform software has to run across lots and lots of devices, so we want to make sure, and some devices have more stable GPUs than others, so we're just being a little bit cautious about it. So I think I just dodged that bullet again. We're working on it. I don't have an ETA, though.
Thank you.
Hey, so very exciting stuff announced this morning. However, that's Jelly Bean, and last time I checked, 7% of people have still not, that's the only amount of people we have on Ice Cream Sandwich. So my question is, how are we going to get more people on Jelly Bean so that we can use those features? No?
Well, we're going to first give you free devices with Jelly Bean. That's one quick way to start.
How many people are at I/O?
So yeah, no, it's a really good question. I actually think the acceleration of ICS Ice Cream Sandwich has been pretty good. If you actually look at because we only released it literally months ago. One of the things we're doing, and we announced it at the keynote, is the PDK, so the Platform Development Kit. And so what we're trying to do is get people, like device manufacturers, access to the source that we're working on earlier so that they can actually work in parallel to us to speed up the time it takes to get out a new device. And so that's one of the initiatives we're trying to do. The other thing we're noticing is, there's such a really great ecosystem built up around Android. We're seeing device manufacturers getting more Android savvy. They're really sharp. They really know what they're doing. And so they're actually getting faster at building devices. So I think it's going to get better because of that. I don't have a silver bullet to offer other than that. The other thing is I've seen some distribution curves of versions, and you got to remember that we sort of had that weird stage where we had gingerbread and honeycomb. We were kind of like two versions as we did the tablet, and then we kind of came back together in ICS. And so I think that sometimes skews data when you look at that. I think what you're going to see is ICS ramp up quite quickly, and then the delta from ICS to Jelly Bean from a device manufacturer is actually quite small. So I think you'll see then the ICS flip to Jelly Bean more quickly. That's a prediction.
Thank you.
How much time do we have? How much time do we have to transition from CT to CD? Help me out here.
C2DM
to the Google Cloud messaging. At what point is the new device registration just going to stop working on CDDM?
It'll be a long time. We'll give you plenty of heads up before that'll happen.
Like a year?
Like a year.
Okay,
yeah.
thanks.
Is there anyone here who can answer a render script question?
I can answer easy ones.
It's regarding shaders and variable packing.
I'm getting nervous.
So, in writing my program, I've discovered that the data structures that I create, render script seems to be converting Boolean and int values into floats. So, if I try and execute an if statement on the structure member, I end up with an error message saying that it has to be a Boolean value. Obviously, I can typecast it in the shader to fix that, but the real issue becomes it makes it difficult to properly pack data.
Yeah, I don't know the answer, but I know a man who does. So if you just come up to me afterwards, I'll get your details and I'll connect you up.
Okay, thank you.
Hi. We've seen a lot of exciting stuff from the Google Maps team today. And a lot of the stuff is focused on like desktop usage through a browser. Now, when running that on like an Android smartphone or tablet, you see that from a user experience point of view, it's kind of lacking as opposed to the native map view component in Android, up to the point where it becomes barely usable. What is the way forward in that respect, and what should we do as developers that want to leverage Google Maps technologies on Android devices?
So yeah, let me just rephrase the question to make sure I understand what you're saying. You're basically pointing out that there's a lot of features in Maps that are not necessarily available to developers via Webview? Is that
They are available via Webview, but it's really slow.
I'm sorry, not a Webview, a map view.
Okay, yeah, correct.
Yeah, it's absolutely the case that the map view is getting kind of long on the tooth. It came from Android 1.0. The API has not changed significantly really since then. That is in fact something that we're looking at. We're aware that there's this increasing functionality gap. It's just one of those things that ends up being kind of a tricky problem to solve because it's possible to build a cool new version, but then how do you maintain backwards compatibility? Do you maintain backwards compatibility? And so we don't have a ready answer, but it actually came up relatively recently with us, and we're working with the Geo team to figure out what the right way forward there is. So we're definitely aware of that problem, and we're looking into it. But yeah, we recognize it's an issue.
And what would be the guidelines for developers right now?
For now, if you can make it work with the current map view, go ahead and do that. But do whatever works for your app. We don't really have a best practice at this time for what you should do instead.
Okay, thanks.
So on the Dory, it says, on the Nexus 7, the notification bar and the system bar are split similar to phones rather than combined such as on current HCICS devices. I guess this goes to, is a similar setup going to be used for 10-inch tablets as well? So this is sort of like a what happens when the DP units are too small? Sure, maybe. On the Nexus 7, the notification bar and the system bar are split, similar to phones, rather than combined as on, like, say, the Zoom. Is a similar setup going to be used on future 10-inch devices as well?
Jelly Bean on a 10-inch tablet uses the system bar like before.
Okay, so there you go. All right.
I
They
had a
talk
question.
slowly, they get really pissed off. Yeah, so, go ahead.
I had a question about more of a hardware question slash viewpoint from you guys. Most of my organization uses iPhones, and I've basically been persuading them to start letting people use Android-based phones. And one of the problems that we've ran into is with all the different manufacturers and phone types out there, some have external media or external storage capabilities and some don't, and the Nexus doesn't. And one of the other things that's really been a barrier to entry for my management team people is that you can't just plug it in and mount it like you can most other, like the Droid you can, or the Razer Max. If you plug it in, it just shows up like a USB drive. And with the Nexus, you have to go into PTP or MTP mode. And if you're a Linux user, that's even more of a headache than it is on Windows and Mac. And so is there a reason why you guys chose to do non-block USB connection, or can you just speak to like why that is, and if that's something that you're going to continue to move forward with that, or will it be a day where it just mounts like a USB drive?
You know, I think some of that has to do with a little bit about user experience around having that mount as a USB key, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that we have a concrete plan for moving forward. I'm looking at Dave, yeah. But I think
Has it been something that anybody else has mentioned to you, or has that even come up that?
we definitely know that there are some devices that do USB mass storage, which is what
Mhm.
you're talking about, and some that don't. And that we haven't done it on our Nexus products recently. I think there are some really great user experiences around PTP, your PPTP and MTP.
Mhm.
But you're right, it's a you need like libmtp on Linux and stuff to get it going. And it can be, there's some good tools, but it's a little bit, like doing anything from desktop Linux, it's a little bit more complex.
Okay.
So, yeah, I mean, USB mass storage is kind of crummy. You know, I don't think we really want to do it. You know, it requires, for example, if you have a 32 gig phone, you have to partition it into a hard partition between the part that would be USB mass storage and the part that's not. And so being able to have, not have a fat file system that has all the negatives to it, that forces you to do a partition, makes a lot of things better. So we kind of tend to not do those in the newer devices.
And it seems like that's how the external storage is, like what the Droid does. Like that's your USB mass key, is that thing, whether you pull it out and plug it directly into your machine or you leave it mounted into your phone. It just makes it very difficult for me to convince somebody that they can't drag and drop stuff onto it. So I was just curious. Yeah.
Yeah, I think dragging and dropping, I think, is probably the host side's software problem. I mean, there's no reason why you wouldn't be able to have it all working. I mean, the iPhone does not use USB mass storage, I don't think.
No.
So.
Okay.
There's no way to create an x86 emulator using, quote, API level 15 or any other API level. This prevents us from using an Intel emulator to develop apps that use maps, for example. Is support for the Google APIs coming to that architecture? Sorry. Basically, support of x86 for the APIs and the emulator.
So we are aware of that. The Intel is actually the one who worked a lot on making the kernel for the emulator work on x86 well. And so they've been contributing some patches back to us. So at some point, we do intend to see if we can actually release that. Same thing, we haven't released Jelly Bean system image running x86. We're working with Intel to be able to release that. But right now, it's kind of like we're not in total control because we depend on them on helping us, fix some issues. But as soon as we can do it, we'll release that.
I do Android development on atypical devices, not tablets, not phones, and
pacemakers.
Say what?
Pacemakers. No.
No. Media set-top boxes, specifically for entertainment-based apps and digital signage, that sort of thing. And one of my biggest headaches is the media player. I'm aware for technical and legal reasons that you can't just have one beautiful media player that works across all devices. And anyway, so I get all these different devices, and they always have some different media player under the hood that works different. The performance is weird, scale's weird, it buffers weird. There's something I have to, which whatever shipment of boxes has to work very differently. I've tried several open source media players. They use the NDK and they've been buggy and also had performance problems. And so I was wondering, with your greater awareness of the Android world, if you were aware of any open source media player projects that could possibly reduce my headache.
So what version of Android is this that you're using?
4.0. 4.0.
So it really comes down to the hardware decoders and encoders that are struggling with. Yeah, I mean the Android framework, the media framework is built on something called StageFright, and then the media player sits on top of that.
Mm-hmm.
We just introduced some new Jelly Bean APIs called Media Codec. Actually, James just came from a talk on that.
I was in that talk.
Yeah, oh, cool. Okay, so you got it. The issue though is that we just mandate different codecs, different profiles. But after that, it's really up to the implementations. And so it is true that there's some variability on the hardware codecs. I mean, if we could standardize on them and just like go, here's the codec, we would, but that would mean it would be software and you wouldn't have the performance. But I think maybe the right answer is getting more tests on our side to make sure that issues you run into we can control.
I was just curious, are you aware of any open source projects out there for?
Well, not any of the ones that you haven't already checked out, like MPlayer and VLC. I mean, we know you're looking at that, right?
Right.
And they're having their issues.
Yeah, and open source will be software-based codecs probably, and so you won't get the performance.
I mean, they tie into the GPUs a little bit, but I mean, it's a pretty challenging area. So,
well,
yeah, I haven't heard of any special program just for Android in the open source world that's addressed this any better than, say, VLC or MPlayer. So
if it makes you feel any better, James and I both spend a significant amount of our time making this work well on the devices that we ship. So you're not alone.
Yeah, it's a lot of work.
That's good to know. Well, thank you.
I work on a Scala plugin to make it easy to run Scala code on Android devices, and one of the things that has to happen is the shrink step in ProGuard, so you get something that can be dexed. But I end up with the full Scala library that I'd like to use at code completion time, and then a minified version of that I want you to dex. Is there a way to hook into the Eclipse build tool to do that, so I can make this a really nice experience for someone just starting out of the box, not using Ant or Maven or something like that?
Not at the moment, but we can talk after, and we can open up some extension point for you to do that if you want.
Great, thanks.
Hi, so in the radio interface layer with the Android source code, there's references made to RIL version 4 of the interface, and then it says that the current version is version 6, and I assume it goes all the way back to 1. But I haven't been able to find any references to the documentation specifically for this interface. And by proxy, the AT command set that the radio interface supports, can we just assume that that's a subset of the standard AT commands, or are any of the newer commands supported for SMS or MMS?
You're looking for documentation?
Yeah, basically.
Oh. Yeah, we don't have as much documentation. Actually, for the PDK, we're trying to build more documentation, because what you're talking about at the real level is really a PDK level stuff. To your question about the Haze commands, I don't know the answer. I'm not sure if anyone else, Rebecca, if you know.
I think it is a subset, but I don't know, and I don't.
Well, I mean, I think it's also very radio dependent as well. I mean,
well, we do support a subset of AT commands, I think. But
I guess the question basically for the AT stuff was, can we assume that the AT commands that work across all devices are on Android, and that there aren't any special ones for Android?
I think that's probably a safe assumption based on the way that we interact with our partners who build radios, but I don't know for sure. It's a good question to ask on the mailing lists.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, I downloaded the last Google Plus version, and it's actually really cool with that menu that opens up. And I was wondering, it's a UI pattern that was first seen in the Facebook application. I was wondering if at some point we might get something like that in the support library, because it's really cool and it has been implemented across different apps in different ways, and I'm just waiting for one standard.
No plans at this point.
Okay.
It's a good idea, though. Spotify does it really well. Have you seen the Spotify app? Yeah, it's good. So does YouTube, actually, the latest version. No, not YouTube, Google+. No, and YouTube. So we do it, yeah. Yeah, good idea.
Regarding the PDK that's being released, is that going to be targeting the Android open source platform as well? Or is that primarily for OEM?
Right now, it's targeted towards OEMs, basically. So, one of the problems is we're kind of a finite-sized team, and so we have to be careful. If we were interacting with everybody while developing, we would just slow down, and so we decided we would sort of try this approach where we make it available to device manufacturers. The explicit goal is just to speed up getting devices to market. That's our first goal.
Is there going to be any increased support, I guess, on the Android open source side of things?
That's kind of orthogonal, so to the PDK.
Okay.
All right. I know you addressed the Android software updates earlier, but I was wondering,
whatever happened to the Android Update Alliance, which guaranteed with OEMs upgrades in 2 months after release of device?
Did we say 2 months?
I think that might have been in base 10.
Base 10?
But it was base 16.
So it was 18 months.
It was 18 months.
Okay. Yeah, so I think what we said last year, and I wasn't here last year, what we said last year was we would make sure that devices got supported for 18 months. And so we're certainly doing that. It hasn't been 18 months since last year, so you can't prove or disprove if it's working yet. It's an important thing.
They're going to call you in December. You know that, right?
Really? Yeah. I mean, it's a good question. It's something we're working with partners hard on.
Hi. In Jelly Bean, you have the ability to disable notifications per application base. Do you have any plans to extend it to more permissions, like say, I don't want a certain application to have internet access anymore?
No. No, we don't.
So the answer is no. Yeah.
One thing I find difficult to do is create kind of packaged UI components to share among different applications. Are there any plans to make that easier?
Do you want to share them just at the compilation level, or you want it to be like installed on the device? Because the first, we're doing that, you have
Both.
Android library projects. So the second one, I don't think Diane will say yes to that, but the first one, I mean, we support that at the compilation level. If you look up Android library project, you can share code and resources.
Right, but you have to actually, at least as far as I know, you actually have to include that in basically your workspace in Eclipse, or it's very difficult to actually package that off and give it to someone as just like a jar, for example.
Right, so we do want to go with binary distribution of that. So apparently IntelliJ allows you to do that, so you should look it up. Or Maven.
Okay.
Or Emacs.
We do want to support that directly natively in the SDK build system, but yes, there are third parties support that do that, and you should try them.
So is there any plans to support it natively?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
So before getting to you, there are 2 questions in the moderator that are very, very similar, and they come down to support for the Now cards, which is what they call them. Basically support for user applications to get into the Now stream, and basically tying into Android side navigation, asking if there's going to be support in the future SDKs for some of the new elements. Make sense?
We have no plans at the moment.
No plans at the moment. Okay.
Hi. So the biggest thing that I find that people coming into the platform as developers from other systems, and as well as demands coming in from clients, is to show a lot of downloaded URLs as images. So dealing with bitmaps and image views and list views and all that kind of stuff, and staying within the memory allowment that we have, as well as dealing with the fact that images come in on the are built in on the native side and then brought over to the Java side and all that kind of stuff. Anyways, the point is it's a really hard problem to solve, and I look at your apps and they're fantastic, and you've solved them in some really clever ways. So are you guys going to open source that? Well, not open source that, because it's already open source, but more bring it to a level where beginner developers can have access to that kind of reliability of A, caching, B, having nice crisp images and not having to downsample, and also speed when it comes to downloading and all that kind of stuff.
So one thing which we are trying to do is pick up a lot of these best practices and make them available as developer training on the newly redesigned developer.android.com site. So if you have a look at the training section there, I think we have a class now which talks about how to download bitmaps efficiently. If not, then I guess that's something which is coming soon. But we're definitely trying to collect up that knowledge, that best practice, and make it more readily available to, so let's say, developers which don't want to have to troll through all of the open source code themselves.
We actually also have a kind of a ready-made jar for exactly this thing that's coming soon. It's just not ready yet. But the idea is that, a really typical pattern is you have like a list view and an adapter, and it has thumbnails, and you're getting them from the network, and you need to deal with recycling the views and everything. We're hoping to have something kind of plug and play that you can link into your app soon. It's just not, it wasn't ready today.
Is it anywhere on the... Is it anywhere in your site to just increase the amount of memory we have access to as an app?
The memory has been increasing pretty regularly, especially as the screen sizes increase. There also was added in Honeycomb was the option to set a large memory size. So if you have applications that do need a lot of RAM, they can say that they want to have a higher memory limit. It's always a trade-off between the RAM for that application and like it could be used elsewhere to keep other applications around, so like you don't have slow switches to other applications and stuff. So it's we do want developers to pay a lot of attention to their RAM use and not just gratuitously go and like I'm gonna use a bunch of RAM because it's easier.
Cool. Thank you.
I might have missed this during the keynote, but are there going to be any APIs for the new voice search and Google Now that we can access?
That was the question that you read out, but no one understood you. No.
Okay. And also just a kind of off topic that I was reminded of on my way here from Sacramento. You used to have separate volumes for navigation, and that disappeared after Gingerbread. Is there any way to have something like that back?
We found people just weren't listening. No.
No. James is saying no. I'm going to hand you over to James.
No.
Thank you.
Sorry.
One of the things that I've liked that was introduced in one of the more recent Android developer tools was the Lint error checking. And is there any thoughts on allowing the developers to have their own test cases basically for that, for instance, to make sure that a text view always has a color set or something like that?
Yes, we actually have an API for it. We just haven't actually finished integrating that into the Lint tool so that it picks up jar coming from you. But it's ready. We're just, we just need to finish that. But it's
awesome.
Ready.
Thanks.
What is the best way of merging the data from your own content provider with data from other content providers available, performing some computation on that data beyond simple joins, and then feeding that data into an adapter, I don't know, cursor adapter, for instance, and displaying in a list view or something? What do you recommend? Because I've been struggling with this.
I think it depends a lot on exactly what you're doing.
For instance, I know there is cursor joiner, matrix cursor, merge cursor, or something like that, but I don't know which is the best way of integrating data from multiple providers on the fly.
Yeah, I don't know the details of all those different helper classes. I mean, basically, you're going to want to do something so that as you iterate through the different cursors, that you don't have to look ahead. I mean, ideally, you'd want to be able to like basically keep a position for each of the cursors and just return the next result. Because if you start to look ahead, then you're going to have to do big queries across all of them, and if you have a lot of data, then you have to requery as you go down the cursor.
Yeah, but how do I? For instance, I want to merge something from my own provider with something from the contacts contract. And display that in a list view. So far, what I did is manually doing that and putting all the data in a matrix cursor and then feeding that to a cursor adapter. But what I found strange is that you can put anything in a matrix cursor, you can put any kind of object, but you can only take out primitives and strings, basically. Why is that? Why is it this limitation?
Yeah, I don't know that.
We have office hours, actually. I think they're on tomorrow as well. So this is kind of like an in-depth question. But if you go there, I'm sure there's somebody who can probably help. So I think it's on the 3rd floor, Android office hours.
Okay, thanks.
Hi, can an Android APK package be signed with multiple certificates?
You can do it, but you really should not.
That's Diane saying no.
There's the model is you have your own self-signed certificate, and that is your identity, and that is the one you should use to sign your APK.
Okay, say I have a dependency on some third-party vendor, so I'll have to get it signed by them. So say my version 1 doesn't have that. Say my version 1 has a certificate X, that is what I own, and my version 2, I depend on some third-party vendor, because of which I'll have to give it to them for signing. How do you manage that, or is that manageable at all?
Yeah, if you're signing it with a different certificate, then it is a different identity. It's a completely different application, and so you have to, you can't treat it as the same thing, and you should give it a different package name.
Okay. Well, one more question. Is there a inbuilt Webview kind of a thing that can render or open documents securely within your application?
I think it's intent-based, right?
Yeah, it's intent-based. So I don't want to give my the documents that are there within my application to some other application for opening, because they can do anything with that document. I want a secure way of opening or viewing the documents. Other than myself writing a document viewer, is there any other way that I can somehow render a document in my own app?
No, there's just Webview, and of course TextView.
Oh, well, for TextView, then you'll have to write your parsers for whatever format you is there, right? So say you have a PDF document, then you'll have to write your parsers for extracting the text and then rendering it in TextView. So apart from writing that, is there a
Yeah,
something
not today.
Okay. Thanks.
Hi, I'm a big fan of library projects, which are quite awesome. But my workspace got really messy lately with Action Partial having version 4, version 3.5. And I tried to solve it with Android Maven plugin, but Aditi doesn't take the .apklib file as a library project, so I have to switch again the library from one version to another. So do you plan to manage that kind of file?
Yes, we do want to support the binary distribution similar to apklib. I don't know if it will be exactly the same, but it's pretty simple, so it will probably support that at some point in the future, but not right now.
Okay, thank you.
Hi again. In terms of portability and performance, it's hard to beat native code, but here at Google I/O, it doesn't seem to be getting much love. Why is that?
In terms of portability, it's hard to beat Java code.
Not on iOS.
That's because you don't have all the different hardware. It's a good question. I mean, the problem is that Android is a platform that runs across lots of different types of hardware, and so we favor Java because it gives you that portability. The problem is if you write everything in native, then you have different types of ARM CPUs. You now have x86 CPUs. You're going to have new architectures in the future, and so it's not as portable.
And there's a render script too, as an alternative.
Oh yeah, I was just wondering, have you guys considered buying Swipe?
let me open up the financial statements at Google and explain where we are. No, what?
I mean, I just think it's the greatest keyboard. I mean, my dad, who's like technically not into it, if you will, to put it nicely, he loves it and he uses it every day. So if he can use it, I think it's just kind of speaks to how great of a keyboard it is.
Yeah, it's funny. I see some people really love it, and other people like the more traditional ones. But yeah, I definitely shouldn't talk about acquisitions.
Yeah. Okay.
So
good.
I just. We put a lot of work into the input method framework to allow you to replace the keyboard, and so I think it's actually great that they have a great keyboard that you can go and buy and support them and use it if you want to.
Well, yeah, but they're not in the market, and
so you should talk with them about
going
in the market.
That's why I'm telling you guys to buy them.
Hi. I have a question related to enterprise apps. I was wondering if the panel can share if there's any plan to open up API to manage 802.11.1x key management, and I'm especially interested in on-campus networks. Probably no. Guess.
Dave?
Is that no?
I think you successfully stumped the panel. Sorry, we don't have anyone from our enterprise group here.
That's actually a different group within Google, so I don't. We don't really have an answer
Is this
to that.
the Cisco thing again? The Cisco 802.1x stuff?
802.11 on campus networks, so whereby.
I think Cisco actually did some drivers. I'm not vouching for them, but you might want to talk to them. They might have something for you. Like I said, I haven't used it myself, but I remember them having a similar problem. So Yeah.
Understood. Thank you.
So I would look for them online.
Hi, I'm really excited about the announcement about the PDK this morning at my device manufacturer. And I have a question about it, and they say it's a 2 to 3 months implied to the release. It is open source. And the other question is, in case we look at the 2 to 3 months before release, it must be immature Android. And how can you describe the difference between current Jelly Bean and the 2 to 2 months before? How can you describe it?
So it's still really early. What we're going to try to do is, let me see if I have this right. We want to get into a rhythm where if you have a device, let's say you have a device brought up on Jelly Bean. So you got the Jelly Bean open source, and we're working on K, whatever that is. Any suggestions for names, by the way? I don't know. What? Keyline?
Keyline.
Okay, Keyline. So we're working on Keyline. What? Keyline. Oh, Keyline Pie. Oh, okay. So we're working on Keyline. It's unofficial, everybody. So imagine we're working on K. What we want to do is make sure that your device that's already running on Jelly Bean can actually start running on an early version of K. So we want to make sure that the HAL, the hardware abstraction layer, is forward compatible. Did I get that right, Rebecca? I think I did. Okay. So the result is that it should be much quicker to bring up your device on the next version. And then when we finally drop the full source and open source, your device should basically be up and running. That's the idea. The specifics of how this all works and the exact timing, like is it 2 months, is it 3 months, et cetera, we're still working that out. This is our first cycle through it. I think we mentioned this morning we've already given some of our partners the PDK, so it's very much a work in progress, but it's looking kind of promising so far.
And to be clear, that doesn't work today, the forward compatibility of the HAL layers. That's something that we're working on. But the goal is for you to someday be able to run the your J BSP if you're a Silicon vendor against K and vice versa. But that's, like I said, that's a goal.
And in case of talking about the hardware abstraction layer, the participation of the chipset vendor is very important. And in case the device is, for example, our chipset is not the one for use for the Nexus devices, do you see the major chipset vendors participate in the program?
Yeah, I think, we've already taken some feedback on things in the PDK or things that were missing from the PDK from some of the partners we've shared with. And the Nexus devices are not all on one chipset, so I think we have some experience now with making these kind of efforts work across different kinds of hardware. That's something that in the beginning we were kind of a Qualcomm house and we didn't know how to do that, but I think we've gotten a lot better at it. So we're definitely going to be taking feedback on it. We're interested in, the systems team is interested on making your life easier and making it easier to bring up Android. It makes our lives easier because we bring up Android on new hardware too. So we're actively interested in what are the holes, what needs to be there and isn't there, what's there that you wish weren't there, things like that, and how your time to bringing up a new Android release on your hardware can be shortened.
I see. Thank you.
Just so you know, Key Lime's not official. I think we should let Krispy Kreme and Kit Kat bid against each other. It'd be auction based. It'd be very googly.
I like Key Lime.
Yeah, you like that. Please.
When will the requires smallest width DP attribute in the manifest actually be used for filtering in Google Play?
Soon.
I
don't have a good answer for you on that right now. It's been kind of a trial migrating from the old screen size buckets to the newer and better smallest width stuff, but soon. It's on our radar.
I just thought it was odd that it was like I saw it there and I thought, oh great, I can not have it be downloadable on certain devices, and then I put it in and it didn't seem to work, and then I realized that it's not actually being used for filtering.
I agree with you.
Okay.
I was thinking more about the desserts. What if we started going backwards? Like we go like J and then go I and then start going back to like H. That would kind of be fun. No?
Well, yeah.
Do you think I threw them off?
No, I'm actually all for it. I think that we're going to be really stuck at Z, and then we'll just have to go backwards anyway.
Yeah, sooner or later
switch over to umlauts.
Sooner or later we have a modulo problem, so we might as well just bite the bullet now and start.
There's probably some German desserts that have umlauts. that we could use, you know?
Okay, that could work.
But that's not what they're here for. Please.
That's about the audio manager APIs. Within ICS, it seems the notification stream and the ringer stream have kind of combined into one, even though they're not combined in the API. I get a lot of users who complain about that. Maybe you could explain the thought behind that.
It was a user experience decision. Do we have anyone from UX here? Nope.
Okay. Well, I got a lot of users who don't like the experience.
Yeah, no, I've
I
seen
prefer the experience, but when it was a configuration option before, you left it up to the user, and now they don't have a choice.
We have an internal meme which, whenever this topic comes up, and somebody will always post a picture which is add another setting, and then they show this picture of this huge mixing desk. So I think the user experience, the UX guys were basically trying to simplify the experience. I think there are some group of people who want that extra level of control.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what the right answer is, but yeah, we're aware of the feedback.
Thanks.
Another thing to point out there is like, yeah, you get complaints from users who want the flexibility. We got probably even more complaints from users who didn't understand what was going on. And so we totally hear, where you're coming from on UX decisions like that, but, our decision-making process includes, the broadest number of users possible. And so, I'm just pointing that out just to kind of, consider both sides of the coin as well.
Hi, just a statement and a question. First, a statement. I think key lime pie is a great name. They're very delicious.
We decided we're going backwards. It's I next.
So my question is, I'm working on an app or a suite of apps that are not for consumer use. We want to control what applications are running on the device. In particular, we want to prevent the users from getting to the browser and the settings, and possibly Angry Birds, because people shouldn't be doing that at this time. Anyways, digressing. We have a service that is running a thread that is scanning the log rapidly to see when the application is getting started, and if one of the blacklisted applications is started, we switch out of it and kill it. I feel it's a really clunky way. It's probably going to drain the battery really quickly. Is there a more elegant way to do this?
Yeah, so from the platform's perspective, that's a malicious application. So
that's why I said not for consumer use.
Yeah, so you'll find over time that the platform has gotten much more aggressive about finding things doing that kind of stuff and stopping them from disrupting the user experience like that. The answer at this point is that you need to build your own, do your own build of Android that has these restrictions. We don't have an application API to do that kind of thing.
So are you saying that our solution will probably stop working in the future?
I would not count on it to continue working.
Awesome, thanks.
Actually, I think it probably broke in Jelly Bean, so.
And now that you tell Diana about it, it's definitely not going to keep working.
Well, it sounds like he wants to start his own build team. So
Hi, just wondering if anybody on the panel can speak to any upcoming changes in Dalvik, maybe some optimizations in the JIT, GC optimizations coming up in Jelly Bean.
Not right now.
No answer? Okay.
I don't think we have the right people up here.
Yeah, we don't have anyone from the Dalvik team today. Sorry.
Okay.
I would find them during the office hours and hammer them, on that. So yeah. Please.
Hi. Okay. Very nice to meet you. In fact, we have one kind of performance issue. Sometimes we found when the system memory is very low, I think it's less than 2 mega. It's very easy to find the Dalvik reset. We check the logs. It always mentioned the watchdog couldn't detect the response from, for example, the activity managed service, some core service. So I want to know, is it normal behavior, or do you encounter this kind of issue on your side? Okay.
Yeah, getting down to, you mean 2 megs of RAM across the entire system is free? Is it?
Yes.
Yeah, that.
the result is the system server was killed. So
yeah, that sounds like a device that doesn't have enough RAM, and that's
so.
Well, there's a lot of there's the out of memory killer. There's has these parameters for when it kills processes and stuff, and it will not kill the system process unless it's very, very, very. I mean, it should never kill the system process. So there's something going wrong there that either the out of memory killer is not working or something like that. I think this is probably a little. This is kind of a debugging thing that probably can't really address here.
Yeah. Okay. So so I feel a little strange is normally this problem is occurred under the when we play the big game. So normally low memory killer it should work, but it's very strange.
So could you find me after this and I can talk with you about it?
Okay. No problem. Thank you.
So on the Honeycomb tablet, like we found a lot of issue with like video playback and segmentation fault issues. So we found the same issue addressed in the ice cream sandwiches, and also the API is better. Is there like a way for you guys to push like the ice cream sandwich for like old device, or like to make sure the future one is updated to the same level? Because it was very difficult to develop when Honeycomb is not doing so well.
Well, different devices have different hardware accelerated codecs on it. So there's a difficulty for us to enforce, say, the same level of performance across different devices. But one thing we probably can improve is in the future, we probably provide some like a profile-based CTS test so that we can say, this device passes this profile, meaning like, medium performance, or, another one pass another profile, so that we probably can sort of like provide a guidance to the user of the device.
I think it's a bug in the system like for my case, like because it's running into a segmentation fault, when I have a continuous playback. So either I assume there's a bug fix to the older device of the tablet, or like making sure they update it to ice cream sandwich, because it seems to fix it.
Okay, then that probably seems like a bug in the driver, maybe.
Okay, so but you guys don't have a plan for example, the Zoom or like an older Galaxy to fix that?
Well, for Jelly Bean release, we actually have a refresh to Zoom device, also even for Nexus S device. Yeah.
Okay.
Hi. I like doing library apps a lot. But sometimes you can have a suite of apps and they all have the same core, and it seems like including the library in every single one of them is like excessive. It's just bloating each one. Is there any plans of allowing something like a dependency on applications on play, so that if you want to install one APK, it depends on another one, and it can just download both? And then, if I install a second one, which is also depending on that APK, it's already there. Doesn't have to download it.
Yeah, I'll take this. Short answer, no. I think that if you look back at something like Windows with all the VB runtime DLLs or whatever, you can see where this ends up, right? And we're trying to learn from the previous mistakes of others, right? You end up with app A and app B, and one of them depends on some particular bug compatibility mode in that thing. So it is a trade-off, right? You trade a little bloat for statically linking versus knowing that the thing that you shipped with stays that way forever. Now, again, I think there are things where we make that trade-off in the platform. We add new APIs and things like that, and it's expected to be backward compatible. But short version is we think it would just become a mess.
Okay, thanks.
So this is probably our last question.
Excellent. So low latency audio, we've heard quite a bit about it today. What kind of improvements are we seeing in Jelly Bean? What percentage, how fast, and also beyond that, the low latency manifest flag, and when it's actually going to be maybe useful, or anyone's going to use it or care?
So what did you hear about audio latency today?
Well, they've been mentioning it in the Android chat this morning. So.
Yeah, it's a work in progress. So to give you a bit of color on it, we're kind of at so we introduced something called a fast mixer. So for sound pool, tone generator, and OpenSL, we'll actually run through a fast mixer, which will reduce the latency. Now, it turns out the latency targets we're going for, they're sub 10 milliseconds on warm audio playback. Once you start getting down to that level, anything at all that's in the system that's preempting you it becomes problematic. And so we're now sort of at the level of device-dependent issues. So on the Galaxy Nexus, I think our latency's gone from about 100 milliseconds in Ice Cream Sandwich down to about 12 milliseconds.
Wow.
But we actually, that's not good enough. We want it to be below 10, and we want all our devices below 10, and all our other devices that we're updating to Jelly Bean are not as good as that, for various reasons that we're working on. And so I think you'll see in the next update we'll do even better. We want to get to a point where we mandate a maximum latency, and we're just not quite there yet, but we're making good progress toward it.
And are you going to be working with any manufacturers in particular to encourage, the drivers to be fast and this type of?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, one of the tools I mentioned at the keynote this morning was systrace, where you can actually look into the system and see what's happening. We originally built that for the, we call it jank busting, not butter, by the way. That was a marketing term. So we built that for jank busting, and it turns out that's actually really good for audio as well. You can actually see, if you get a glitch in audio, you can see what happened in the system. Like, maybe a Wi-Fi driver thread was running at a higher priority than the audio thread, and starved it, etc. Or there was a hot swap of a CPU in or out. And so we're working through all the different issues basically. So watch this space; it will get better.
Awesome, thank you.
And that's all of our time for today. Thanks to the panel. If you have any further questions, there will be office hours tomorrow, it sounds like, as well as people milling about to help you.